it's always going to be this type of movie. I'm pretty sure Nolan will never tell. It's the You're So Vain of Christopher Nolan movies. And
welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
all right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Kapow.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Hey!
And today we're going to be doing the Elite 8 of our bracket for the best of the 2010s decade. It's getting serious now, folks.
It's been serious. A journey, man.
It has been a journey.
Man.
We have some movies today that I'm not going to want to see go, but that's the nature of the beast. So I guess let's get right into it. We're going to do some questions after this. We're going to winnow this down to the final four, and then we will do that. We're going to do that the next time we do this. So, Elite 8, we're going to the North region, where we have our stalwart number 1 seed Mad Max Fury Road going up against the 2 seed Hell or High Water. So this was all chalk in this bracket here. 2 movies that I love dearly.
Yeah, 2 very different presentations of women, right? Like is there even any prominent woman besides like the surly waitress in Hell or High Water?
Well, and
his ex-wife.
Yeah, Chris Pine's ex-wife is at the very end, and he makes a point of saying that she's the one that's in charge of the property and everything at the end of the movie.
Yeah, he goes to see her in the middle of the movie too, and then goes out back and offers his son a beer.
yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head who plays his ex-wife?
I don't. It's not an actress I remember.
I thought it was Katie Holmes, but that's in Logan Lucky.
Yeah, and I'm glad too at the end of that where he's having a beer with his son, that his son isn't like, "Fuck you, Dad, you left and you're terrible" and all that. He really loves his dad. So like I get really exhausted of seeing that kind of relationship in movies.
He does though. He does say, well, first you tell me not to be like you, and then you offer me a beer. So which is it? And then Chris Pine is like, "Good boy."
Yeah.
I like when they're hanging out on the porch when Ben Foster and Chris Pine are drinking, and I guess it's when they're coming up with the idea and stuff like that. And Chris Pine's like, "You're drunk," and Ben Foster is offended. He's like, I don't get drunk on beer. Nobody can get drunk on beer. And that's the most offensive part of that sentence.
Yeah. So I don't know if if we should just go ahead and vote on some of these. If there's something that somebody wants to talk about, they can.
Well, these are, about the matchup itself. We've had some good matchups. We've had some tough matchups. And we've had some that were pretty lopsided. With this one, I mean, they're 1 and 2 seeds for a reason. They're so evenly matched. They're both gritty. They're both about the triumph of the spirit.
They both take place in Texas.
They both take. Yeah, they sure do.
Is that where Fury Road is?
No. Not at all.
Is it in California?
No, it's Australia.
Australia? Oh, that's right, Australia.
Yeah, it's Australia.
These are super. This would be a heavyweight match that would last until the end, I think.
I guess in the category of what these movies are about, Mad Max Fury Road, it does work on just an action movie level. You can watch this movie as just an action movie and be totally fine with that, but it does have more on its mind than just that. Obviously, just the Mad Max series has sort of a warning sign for people living in this day and age about, the sort of the the world that they live in, where natural resources could become as valuable as gold.
Yeah.
And in Mad Max Fury Road, for the first time, it really, really becomes a big feminist type movie. Charlize Theron is the perfect actor to be in that role, to be the hero of that and everything. And she takes this movie over, and it's no wonder that they were thinking about making a Furiosa movie for so long.
Do you know why that didn't happen?
I don't. I don't know why that. I think just like anything, people throw that out there sometimes. They gauge the interest, and there may not have been very much interest for a Furiosa movie. But I would have watched it.
Hell yeah.
But you have all these women who have been held captive for all this time, and they're having to be a breeder for this Morton Joe guy, and once they break out, they're all badasses and everything, and just to show tremendous strength throughout it. And Mad Max is sort of incidental. He's a hero in the movie, but he's incidental to what they're trying to tell in the movie. And so if you were going on what is the deeper thought of each movie, I think Mad Max actually beats Hell or High Water in that case, because Hell or High Water is a simple sort of heist movie with a kind of a twist. Mm-hmm. There might be a little bit something you can go into with like banks and stuff like that, and how banks treat people and that type of thing. And I think Hell or High Water beats Mad Max Fury Road on plot.
Right. And performance probably too, maybe.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, I would say performance for sure. Mm-hmm. Because in Mad Max Fury Road, they're not required to do anything like over the top, serious, anything. They have to be competent. Whereas in Hell or High Water, they have to be really good.
I do agree with you. But I do agree with you, but I do think Hell or High Water has a couple of moments where it's trying to say more. Like there's that bit where they're both watching the bank, Jeff Bridges and his partner, and there's this whole bit about how those people took the land from my ancestors, and somebody eventually came and took the land from those people, and now it's the banks that are running. So I think there are a few moments where it's peeking into the at least socioeconomic lines in rural Texas, if not racial lines, because the movie makes a lot of light of Jeff Bridges' racial jokes, but I also think that's part of the point, is that if you're either Mexican or Native or both, heaven forbid, this is the shit you put up with from your white partner all the time in Texas. There are threads there that are, I think, saying a little bit more than a heist, but I don't think it's coming close to what the feminism message that Mad Max is trying to give there.
Yeah, like it's not part of the plot as much. Like I think of a movie like Lone Star, which has that same kind of, it's in Texas. It's a mystery. But there's a lot of things about race that they're talking about in that movie and everything. And it doesn't quite get to that level, and it doesn't have to. We're not saying that it does. It's just that you're right. It does peek a little bit into that kind of dynamic, doesn't it? For sure.
Oh boy.
Okay. So, where do we want to go with this matchup?
I can't believe that one of these two is done.
I'm actually going to go with Mad Max. I love Hell or High Water. I don't know if I've ever been as high on it as Jeremy, but I do love it. I probably need to watch it a few more times, but Mad Max has my heart and my gonads. Okay. So I'm going to go with that.
All right. Jeremy, where do you think you're going on this one?
I got to go Mad Max.
All right.
I don't want to, because Hell or High Water is a movie that I feel led to champion. But I just keep coming back, at least so far, every time Mad Max has faced anybody else, I just keep thinking about all the spinning plates that he had to have going to make Mad Max succeed. And it's a lot of fucking spinning plates. And just the achievement there, it had a higher aim in what it was trying to pull off, for sure. But it landed, and I have to give it the edge.
I totally didn't think that they would either. I've told you this when the trailers were coming out for that summer, and I saw that. I was a mix of sort of excited because George Miller I knew was at least competent, but I was also a little worried because he's in his 70s making this movie, and that that it was going to, like, the trailer itself looked so ridiculous. Like, I didn't think there was any chance that would be good.
It had a fire guitar.
Yeah.
And the fire guitar actually works. It plays. Like, it does. Like, it works in the context of the movie.
Who are you to doubt the flaming guitar, Barrett? The flaming guitar is going to work all the time. This is going to be a sweep, unfortunately. I was also going with Mad Max Fury Road here. I'm glad I didn't have to break somebody's dreams on this one. But I'm sure we broke a few of you guys out there listening's dreams for this one, because I know couple of people have come on and on Facebook and have said how much they love Hell or High Water and they want it to win. It's just not going to. Tough matchup. Mad Max Fury Road goes on to the final four, I'm good with that. If you were to go through this bracket, at the 64 point, you would probably have a very high chance of getting Mad Max Fury Road all the way down to this point. So if you went chalk, you did the right thing.
There you go.
We move on. What?
I don't know what the process that Aaron was talking about. You can actually vote along with this, right? Every Monday.
Yes. In fact, I believe we were talking about this earlier. There is a fan poll on Cinemasins BTS.
Yeah, and the Twitter handle at Cinemasins BTS.
And there is currently a fan vote going on, which has already skewed from our own bracket in some ways. But they're going to have that done before we're done. So if you want to jump onto that and be a fan voter, you can do that.
Yeah.
What was the cinemasinsbts.com and then on a Twitter?
On the Twitter is at CinemaSinsBTS.
Okay. We move on to the East region. And this was another chalk bracket. Number 1, Inception against the 2 seed, The Martian.
Speaking of Aaron Dicer, it was so fascinating reading that Slack thread that you guys had about his interpretation of Inception, and how it changed a movie that he kind of liked or didn't even like to one that he loved. He
felt like it didn't hold up because there were so many things about it that I had brought up in last week's pod, and if we really wanted to get super deep I know the thing about Inception is that you can go down a rabbit hole. Yeah. You can sit there and talk about it forever. You're not going to be you feel like you're never going to be 100% right, but he was talking about the fact that he believes that Cobb is always in a dream the entire movie. And so everything that's in the movie that doesn't make sense to you can always be explained by he's in the dream the whole time. Like, for instance, Arthur getting shot in the dream at the beginning and them not waking up out of it and everything is a function of him still being in a dream. So I guess we're always seeing him one layer below. If you were to take that interpretation, he's one layer into a dream every time we see him. He's never all the way back. Which means there's a Cobb somewhere just lying down in a building somewhere, and he's been asleep for weeks because he was down in limbo with his wife for 50 years, and then there's the point where the movie takes that break where you're not quite sure if he knows what he's talking about. If he's got memories or if it's a dream or whatever, because there's so many things that he recalls to Ellen Page in that movie that you look at what the movie is showing us doesn't make sense to us. Like, her being on the other side in another apartment building before she does that jump. Mm-hmm. There's and just the fact that the idea that he apparently incepted into her was, you're not in a real place, you're in a dream, and that carried with her all the way up to, according to him, carried with her all the way to the real world. So she thought that the real world was a dream, but it could very well describe him too.
Yeah. You just wonder, like, what are the stakes then? Like, is he still trying to wake up? Is he still trying to get out of this?
I don't know. I think at this
point of the movie,
at this point, it just becomes a mind fuck. That's all. That's the only thing I hate about that interpretation. Is that everything?
It's the Joker problem, right? Like, if it was all in his head, it was all a dream. Then what did I just watch?
Right. And how do I know? Like, if you take that interpretation, I really don't want to have this conversation. If you take that interpretation, then you're saying you buy some of the rules the movie gives you, even though those are all given to you within his dream. I need something before or after that's outside the dream, and then I'll buy everything you saw from this point to this point was a dream, so I have some measure of context. Here, for all I know, in the real world, when he wakes up, there are goddamn dragons and like giants and White Walkers and shit. I don't have any real world at all if this was all a dream. So again, like Chris said, what's the fucking point? I don't even know if Chris said that. I'll say it. What's the fucking point?
Barrett said, what's the fucking point? And I said, that's maybe the only thing that I don't like about the interpretation. It does explain a lot of things. It's just that it opens more questions once it explains the things in the movie itself. So, I mean, it's always going to be this type of movie. I'm pretty sure Nolan will never tell. It's the You're So Vain of Christopher Nolan movies. And,
so what you mean is in like 30 years, he'll auction off for $30 million the chance to whisper in one person's ear.
That's
what the
correct.
Real meaning of the movie is.
It's the you ought to know.
Yes, it is. It is. Yes, it is. It's
I thought we all knew You Ought to Know was Uncle Joey.
I think at this point, I think everybody assumes it's
everybody assumes, but I've heard other things about that too. Where
have you really?
Yeah, where either she denied it, or I can't remember. Like there was some other question about it, and people were like, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it's about.
That's right.
She went down on that guy, and he in a theater, and he still broke up with her. Broke up with her. You can't do that on television's Alanis Morissette. That's what he did. So Inception goes up against The Martian, and this movie, these two movies going up against each other. I mean, we had a pretty distinct matchup in the first one that we did today. Yeah. Though movies are completely different. Now, Inception and Martian are essentially very different, but they appeal to the same, I think, part of your brain, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
It's all about problem solving, and that's the way I feel about it anyway. Inception and Martian are both about problem solving in the end. And maybe I guess many movies are like that, but it seems like that they make this the forefront.
They do, and the way that they exposit in both of these movies, I think, is very clever. With Inception, it's through dialogue. It's through Ellen Page's character being the proxy to say each component of how this works, right? So we do get the information as the movie goes along. And they do it so brilliantly in The Martian by having Mark be the omniscient narrator, telling you everything, every step that he's going to take and what happened after that. That's why you have that wonderful, I'm going to set a fire. NASA doesn't like fires,
Yeah.
And he does it, and you have that woo, and then he gets blown up, and then you see him all singed on the next one. He's like, well, that didn't work.
That's the part of The Martian that gets me excited about the movie more than anything, though, is that the rules are there to keep you safe. But if you're in a situation like this where you need to break the rules and everything, you have to figure out, is this making me safe as a precaution, or is this making me safe? Is it making me safe because if I do it, I will die if I do it? And that's what that whole thing about finding the little what is it, the radioactive decay thing in the middle of the of course you're going to bury that shit and you're going to put a flag on it because you don't want that just hanging around. You don't want something radioactive around or whatever. But he knows that is a precaution more than it is something that is actually just keeping you safe or whatever. You just don't want to stumble on it or just accidentally blow it up or something like that. He solves a problem by saying, okay, yeah, normally you wouldn't want to have this on the back of your rover, but it's going to keep me warm and I'm not going to expend my batteries with a heater.
Well, then that even extends to the thinking at NASA when they decide to skip the inspections on the probe.
Yes.
Because, the inspections are there as a precaution, but this is an emergency and we can't afford that. The time is more important. Of course, backfires on them. But I like that is reflected both on Earth and the NASA scientists and on Mars with Mark.
Right. I mean, you think about it the other way. If they had decided to go through with all the different safety precautions and everything, they would have had a successful launch. It wouldn't have gotten there in time. Yeah. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's why, it's funny because, of course, people are going to be, at first, they're going to be like, I don't want to do this because it's my ass if this doesn't work or whatever. But like in extreme situations, you've got to figure out the problem in a different way. And that's what I love about The Martian. When it comes down to it, just, I like so many different things in this where he's just like, it seems like he's at a dead end, but then he just kind of thinks about it and he's like, all right. I know what I need to do now. And if this doesn't work, I'm going to be dead. But if I don't do it, I'm going to be dead. So,
I like that it's so improbable that Donald Glover, his character, would just come up with that, the whole slingshot thing by himself with all these models and all these computers going. But it's so exhilarating too, because you see, maybe there is a chance, like the one chance in hell that they could actually make this work. And he's so confident about it. It has no choice but to work.
If any of them had seen Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, they would already know about slingshotting around a planetary body in order to travel through time.
I'll go one better. They're in NASA. They should know that. No, I just I think the one main complex thing that Donald Glover figures out that nobody else does. And you would assume that a bunch of NASA scientists would sit there and go, oh yeah, what about the slingshotting? And you would think that a bunch of them would come up with that. But the problem that Donald Glover is going through is the fact that Earth and Mars are in a weird orbit at the time. And you have to figure out when to start speeding up and when to start doing all that. So I think the problem was too complex for somebody to just say, hey, let's just slingshot them around the Earth and whatever. Of course, there are also a lot of them are not thinking that anyway because they don't want those astronauts to still be in space. Right. So it could have been a situation where they were just like, we're not even thinking about that type of thing because we want to get them back and we want to figure out other ways to get Mark back.
Rich Parnell is a steely-eyed missile man.
I'm wondering, is that must have been something that they said a bunch at NASA because that's in Apollo 13 as well.
Maybe it is.
In Apollo 13, there's a point where he points to somebody in NASA control points to somebody and goes, "And you, sir, are a steely-eyed missile man."
Huh. Interesting. Maybe that's just a nod from one space rescue movie to another.
It could be.
It's an homage.
Okay, guys, between these two movies, what are we going to pick?
I'm ready to jump through the screen if you guys choose wrong.
Having watched both of these movies recently and I think almost right on top of each other, I'm going to pick The Martian.
Woo!
I am going to pick The Martian too.
Mm-hmm.
Martian's one of the most enjoyable movies, start to finish, that I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Martian.
Actually, for me, kind of a surprise sweep over Inception there.
Yeah.
Inception, obviously, if you're Nolan and you're just creating out of nothing, essentially, that's the most creative movie that there is. But the more enjoyable movie, the movie that if you put both of these movies in front of me, how many times I'm going to pick The Martian? I imagine I would pick The Martian 6 out of 10, maybe 7 out of 10 times. So The Martian goes to the final 4. It's going up against Mad Max Fury Road.
Ooh.
No.
Right?
No.
No. No.
Mm-hmm.
We move over to the South region where the surprise 8 seed Parasite
Yeah.
goes up against the 7 seed Her. This was not chalk at all. This bracket was the biggest bloodbath for sure out of the group. And there were so many like I can't believe this movie is leaving now situations going on in this bracket. and we have an 8 versus a 7 here. And I, Parasite, again, just from what I've read on the Facebook comments that I've seen, it still hasn't quite seeped into a lot of people yet. They've either not seen it, which is fair, or they've seen it and they're just more connected to a movie that's been out for 10 years, which is fair. But having watched Parasite twice now, this movie just keeps seemingly getting better and better to me, and I feel like I'm going to keep on seeing more things about it that I like about it as I continue watching it.
Yeah, you saw Okja, right? Did you both of you see Okja?
I have not seen Okja.
This is the guy Bong Joon-ho that did Snowpiercer, which is one of the grittiest dystopic movie, but creative movies I think I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Did you start seeing this transition to, I don't know, more polished stuff in the Okja movie as it turns out in Parasite?
Yes and no. I guess if you mean because Snowpiercer has a lot to say about class inequality. It's actually a lot more in your face somehow than what Parasite has to say about it. But Okja does as well. Obviously, a clear, important theme for this director. But I would say Okja is the brightest, most colorful and vivid of the three movies. Because even Parasite gets gritty. Like when their house gets flooded and that whole scene, that's every bit as gritty as anything in Snowpiercer. But yeah, the dude has layers, man. You can watch his movies on multiple different layers, and that's pretty rare.
We've discussed that he's made a movie called Parasite and The Host, right?
I don't know if we have.
And you've seen The Host, right, Chris?
Yeah, I saw The Host a long time ago. I actually don't remember much about it. I just remember it being fun. It was a fun movie.
That's one that I want to go back to. I'd actually like to watch Snowpiercer again. It's been a while since I've seen that.
Well,
and that was in contention for the bracket because it's fantastic.
And you brought up the polish or whatever. Snowpiercer's pretty polished.
Especially towards the end.
It's pretty, but there were shots in Snowpiercer that I was just mesmerized by. When he has that long train going around a curve and you can see from one cabin the other side of the train. I was just like, that's just brilliant. It's so simple but brilliant. It's such a unique film and everything. And Parasite, Parasite seems like it's going to be like, I don't know, a basic kind of Matchstick Men almost kind of movie where they're just kind of, that's all it really is. But it's got so much more for you. Like, you seriously think it's hit a dead end at some point in the middle of this thing where you're like, where do you actually go here? Do they get caught? What's going on? And then boom, there's this surprise that comes out of nowhere that you're just like, no fucking way. Would have never guessed that. Never, ever guessed that. And so it's that movie is just ridiculously enjoyable. And it goes up against Her, which is another movie that's, it's another movie that talks about our the possibilities of what we could be getting into in the future with our phones and everything. You have AI that is so good that you can have a relationship with it and everything.
So he starts off the movie, Joaquin Phoenix, being depressed because of the divorce, right? And that's kind of where he's at, because this movie starts off on a very different tone, right? Like he's writing these creative missives and everything, but he's also pretty despondent in his personal life. And I guess buying this OS is just a way to make him feel better, right? Because he won't sign those papers, right?
Yeah. I mean, how long are we saying that he hasn't signed those papers? Like, I know the movie says it somewhere, because she goes through the emails, I think. Samantha does. And
it seems like it's been a while.
Like maybe 6 months is what I think I may have remember hearing.
Yeah.
He's a little despondent about that, and he's at this job where he is having to come up with this beautiful language for people who are actually in love and everything. And I'm sure that's got to be a little bit hurtful too. And the one that he does at the beginning, I think it's the one he does at the beginning, or maybe one later, where he does one where he has all these personal details. And I think Samantha asks, how do you know all that? And he goes, oh, I've been doing this guy's cards for like 12 years.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing.
Yeah. And he's probably, I don't think the movie says one way or the other, but he's probably a little bit jealous of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
The idea that he's having to do, he's writing, he's basically Cyrano de Bergerac to this guy's 12-year relationship. There's
Jeremy,
so much going on there.
You still think that this has a sad ending, right?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
I guess the only way it has a happy ending is if you're rooting for the machines, which is fine.
But what about you don't think Joaquin's going to be okay? He's got the friendship of Amy Adams. He's got a support system. He's got a job.
I'm just saying the first healthy relationship he's had that brought him out of that depression and despondency basically leaves him because he's not smart enough to be on her level.
Yeah,
that's true.
But you could also see, hey, how long would that have lasted? You also see flashbacks of him and Rooney Mara like laughing it up, enjoying life at towards the beginning of their relationship, and actually quite a while into their relationship, and then it ends badly. So who's to say that it would have kept its current trajectory?
So you're saying all his relationships are doomed anyway, so we should celebrate when they end.
No. I think that they're showing that there is an issue well before she realizes she's too smart for it. They don't start any trouble. They don't start the trouble right at the point where she starts. She and the other OSs resurrect the Brian Cox philosopher or whatever. They don't. That's not where the problem starts. In fact, that's where it seems like the relationship's on the mend is when that happens.
Yeah, because they go out to that cabin, right?
Yeah, but before that, she says we don't have sex anymore, and he goes, well, there's always a honeymoon phase at the beginning. Couples always stop having sex after a certain amount of time and everything, and that's when then she hires Portia Doubleday to come in and be the surrogate and all these different things. And then he says some things offhand that he really, he says, you're not human. You don't have a body. And she's like, don't you think I know that? I know that. Of course I know that. I think we can feel sad that he's not going to be with her anymore, but I don't think they were going to be anyway.
Yeah. So he was doomed to fail.
I feel like you guys didn't get dumped by enough girls in college. It's really the problem here. And if you had, not only would you understand my interpretation of this movie, but also why I write so many college girlfriend sins. How are we voting? Are we ready to vote?
No fun getting dumped.
Yeah, let's vote.
What do you guys think?
I'll vote Parasite.
Really?
I have been a her champion, and I still love it. But Chris has been saying this to every comment on Facebook that we just didn't seed Parasite properly when we made the bracket because we didn't know. It was too recent. Now we know.
We didn't listen.
If you don't know, now you know.
Yeah. Barrett, I have a feeling this is going to come down to me, so you go ahead and vote.
Yeah, because I'm going to go with her. I recognize the brilliance of Parasite for sure, and maybe it's me guarding against a recency bias or whatever. But her got into me. Her connected to me on an emotional level, and it's visually gorgeous. The acting is superb. The cast is fantastic. Concept is fantastic. Again. Extremely unique movie. Both of these are, but I got to go with her.
Is the one weakness of Parasite its ending?
The ending?
Yeah,
it depends. I like it. I think if you end with the vision of the son buying the house, then that's a bad ending. But because you go back to them living in the basement apartment to show that that's just his dream, and they are still in the same situation, I think it's a good ending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just the Morse code for me. I think it's great. It's a great reveal that the dad is where the husband was.
Mm-hmm.
Are you just meaning the Morse code, Chris?
Well, yeah, we've talked about Parasite enough that I've heard the Morse code and the actual ending of him buying the house at the end and all that. That's been somewhat troublesome. I think for me, that ending is just the fact that, he says, well, I've decided that I'm going to just make some money. And it's as easy as that. Make money and we're good. But yeah, I mean, you don't know whether or not that's just a fantasy or if that's what actually happened or what and everything. I got to tell you guys, this is a 50-50. This is as 50-50 as it gets.
Ooh.
Because I enjoy both of these movies for all the different kind of they're both so creative. They're both unexpected. They both They both have the same amount of humor. I'm going to go with my first blush. It's going to be Parasite.
Oh.
Yes! Oh.
Boy, that was being pent up.
You had me on the edge.
Do you have any idea of when I made the decision? It was right then.
as the word was escaping your mouth.
Yeah.
Wow.
If I had said her, I would have been fine with it. We would have moved on. Jeremy would have been pained. Parasite moves on to the final four. I think this is a surprise. I actually did not think Parasite. If you were to look at this bracket at the beginning, I didn't think it had a chance. Really, I knew that it would. I knew that it would get past the Florida Project. I was not sure it was going to get past the Social Network.
Yeah, this is a run, man. I'm going to watch this movie again. You've seen it now, Jeremy, like 3 times or so.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
And you've seen it twice, Chris.
Seen it twice. Yeah.
I need to watch it again, and I think it is on Hulu actually. So hopefully, more people, as we're doing this whole world experiment, are getting exposed to it.
Yeah,
more so than they would, in the limited release that we saw it in.
Yeah. We move to the West region, our final matchup of the day. Another really tough one. It's a number 1 seed against a 2 seed. So for the most part, I do think that the seeding was right on a lot of these. It's just that Parasite was a little bit better, maybe a lot more better than we thought it was. Than we thought it was. But the fact that we still ended up with 1 and 2 and 3 of the other brackets, it just goes to show that those definitely were the movies that should have been seeded that. The number 1 seed Ex Machina goes up against the 2 seed Get Out.
Oh,
yeah, this is a rough one. I had to go back and watch Ex Machina. This was the only movie I watched over the weekend that I had not seen in the last 2 months that we've been doing this. I have seen it. I had seen it recently, but I can't remember for what reason. If I had done it because of this bracket and wanted to see it before we started, or if it was because of some other reason. But it had been a recent time that I had seen it before this last one over the weekend.
We did do a Sin video on this, right?
We did, but I don't think I was on that script. I think that may have been you and Jeremy.
Oh, okay.
Was it? You remember?
I was on it. I don't remember who was with me.
I was
I
on
don't
it.
remember shit like that.
I thought maybe it was not an all hands on deck, but I thought maybe there was multiple writers.
It's possible I watched it for that reason to look over the script, but I don't remember. I don't remember what it was. I saw it recently before this, though, and then I saw it like in the last 2 days because I had seen Get Out last week, and so now I have both of them fresh in my mind. And as I was watching Ex Machina, I was like, Jesus, how do we make this decision?
Yeah.
Because both of these movies are just excellent.
Is there much score in Ex Machina?
Yeah, a little bit. Not much. Not like it permeates the film or anything. But yes, there are some key scenes that have some really cool music. Actually.
Oh, okay. I need to listen for that more because something like his other movie Annihilation has such an unsettling score. I think it's supposed to be, especially when they're in the shimmer. It's got like almost a vibrato type of thing.
That scene where they're stabbing him at the end, which is the craziest. Those knife scenes are so crazy. How just easily they just put that knife in.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
But during those scenes, the music has got this. Oh
yeah, I remember that.
And it's really cool. It's cool music. It's not like all the way through. What was I going to say about it? I watched a bunch of stuff on Ex Machina, man. I watched some behind the scenes and like talking to the director and all this, and there were some things that came out of that. This has nothing to do with the bracket, but I was surprised to find out. I did not know Alex Garland was a novelist before he went into screenplays and stuff. So he wrote the book for The Beach. The Leonardo DiCaprio
really
movie that Danny Boyle directed, in which of course later he would write Sunshine that Danny Boyle would direct, and he did a movie called The Tesseract, which is apparently not very good, but it came out in 2003. He wrote a book for that, and I think he may have written the screenplay or something like that. But just going through that history and everything was really interesting. But Ex Machina is one of those movies where I pop this in going, okay, I know this movie. I know it back and forth, everything. I know what's going to happen. But there's always something that just strikes you as you see it. There's just more stuff to it as you go along. I just think I think it's funny how many times Donald Gleason says something in this movie, and Oscar Isaac sort of like misinterprets it, but it's on purpose. But Donald Gleason is so stupid in this situation that he thinks that Oscar Isaac is really being serious. When Donald Gleason does that quote about the I am man destroyer of worlds and all that, he's Oscar Isaac's like, yeah, man, that's great. You keep on coming up with great words like that. He's obviously being sarcastic. But Donald Gleason's like, no, that was Oppenheim when he made the nuclear bomb. He's like, I know where the fuck it came from, man. And he does that same thing when he tells him about finding the singularity and everything, and saying this will be the work of all mankind or whatever. And Donald Gleason's like, it'll be the work of gods. And then later on, Oscar Isaac's like, that thing that you said earlier about me not being a man but a god, I loved that, man.
I'll tell you what, man, Donald Gleason is putting together like a sneaky legendary career. You know what I mean? He's ran just amazing stuff. He kind of disappears into the role too, you know?
Yeah.
For me, what I always remember about Ex Machina, in addition to it being fucking awesome, was this was my basic first exposure to all three of these actors. Like I hadn't seen the Oscar Isaac Coen Brothers movie. I hadn't seen About Time with Donald Gleason, and I hadn't seen anything with Alicia Vikander. And so for me, it was like, wow, this actor's great. Wow, this actor's great. Wow, this actress is great. Holy shit, that movie ruled. And so it has a very, very sweet spot in my heart because now I see them all grown up in Star Wars and Tomb Raider and Thorn and shit. And I'm looking back, like, my kids are all grown up.
Yeah, I knew of Oscar Isaac because I had seen the Coen Brothers movie that I can't think of the name. Inside Llewyn Davis. I had seen that, but I was also still in that mode where he and Jake Johnson look so much alike that I didn't know which one was which a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because they both had the same. There was even a thing I saw today, a Drunk History, where Jake Johnson is playing somebody on the Chicago White Sox from the 1919 Black Sox series and everything, and I was like, "Is that Oscar Isaac?" Oh, it's Jake Johnson. It's Jake Johnson. But I had seen those things, but yeah, he certainly wasn't big at that point. Star Wars hadn't come out yet. In fact, there's on the Blu-ray they had the South by Southwest panel, and the moderator says, "Here's the people for Ex Machina." Is like director Alex Garland. Nobody really knew who he was. Actor Oscar Isaac, and there was like a kind of, hey, if he had done Star Wars by that time, that would have been completely different.
Yeah.
But yeah, these actors are great. Alicia Vikander, that's one thing that in the behind the scenes that they constantly talk about is how this special effect of what she looks like entirely depends on her performance. And the special effects guys are pretty like quick to say, if it's not for her, then we don't do this. This isn't going to look right. And she's just wearing a suit that they just cut out some sections of and make it look like she's all robotic. In that midsection and on around her head and everything. And she had to do all this crazy makeup thing where they had to wet down her hair. Then they had to put a bald cap on it. Then they had to put more skin on top of the hat to make it look like it had that lip around it and everything. Just a lot of crazy stuff just to get to that point. And they didn't have a big budget either. But yeah, man, this movie just constantly constantly inventive and everything. And it goes up against Get Out, which is also constantly inventive about everything. Okay. Where are we going to go with this, guys? I will go ahead. I don't want to see Get Out go, but I'm going to pick Ex Machina here.
Oh, man. This is like as 50-50 as it can get. I think just because you've got two lead performances that are completely electric in two very different ways. Like Oscar Isaac is dynamic in this movie. He plays drunk. He plays fired up, like hitting the punching bag and everything. He plays super smart. He plays weird dancing guy. Like he plays evil. Like he's able to show you different sides of this guy's person. You actually like root for him at some points when they're having like their creekside chats and stuff like that. You're like, maybe this guy isn't so hideous after all, but he kind of is. And then you have Daniel Kaluuya's performance in Get Out that is dynamic in so many other ways. You think about the tears when he's hypnotized. His microfacial stuff, like I've always talked about, the way he looks when somebody says, "I don't care" or whatever. It's like, I know better than you. I think I'm going to go Get Out.
All right.
This is not 50-50. I go Ex Machina. I'm sorry, Get Out.
I'm having a rough day, dude.
Well, it's not. Ironically, I'm not looking to punish you in that choice, whereas other times I have been. But I think Interstellar over Get Out last time. And that was a bit of foreshadowing, I think, for my vote this week. So, Ex Machina.
Yeah. I honestly, this is one of those where I feel like we're being way too evil to ourselves doing a bracket like this, having to pick between movies of this caliber.
Get Out. Get Out, got out.
Our final four is going to be Mad Max Fury Road versus The Martian and Parasite versus Ex Machina.
Woo. So I guess we got 2 number 1 seeds, a 2 seed, and an 8 seed.
That's exactly right.
That's pretty fair. Normal tournament would
that's fair. Yeah.
Turn out.
I would say so. All right, everybody. It is time to talk about BetterHelp once again.
BetterHelp. I'm telling you what, man. I've been using this service quite a bit recently. I've been open about my struggle with anxiety, especially in this time. But I've now moved to 2 times per week, which you can do on the BetterHelp platform. My therapist has been fantastic to work with. I'm using the practices that she suggested. I'm telling you, man, this process could not have happened at a better time for me, getting access to it. I was talking to my regular physician, and talking to her about my anxiety, and she said, "Are you getting any mental health counseling?" I said, "Well, actually, I'm doing this." And she was like, "That's spectacular. I'm going to start telling my other patients about that." Make sure, by the way, if you do feel like signing up for this offer, go to betterhelp.com/Sincast. Let them know that we sent you there. You get 10% off your first month. This is going to be the month that you're going to be using it the most likely. It's super convenient. All licensed therapists, and my experience has been great. And I think therapy talk therapy, counseling therapy in this environment is almost essential right now. Don't you think,
in fact, I keep waiting for somebody to introduce a bill in Congress that adds some of these billions of dollars we're pumping back into the economy to go for mental health, because I'm concerned about how much of a toll it's taking on people who either had latent anxiety issues or latent mental health issues that are now presenting. And, for how long this goes on, which we don't know, it's only going to exacerbate a lot of mental health issues. And so to have a service, like a lot of therapists are scrambling now to set up teletherapy with their clients. BetterHelp has it all set up already. And, if you don't vibe with your first counselor, it's no big whoop. You can switch to a different one. We've got more than one person on our crew that's using this service, and I've heard nothing but rave reviews. So if you're struggling, give this a try, and you can do it from your own home in a variety of different ways: text, phone, video chat. It's just really, really flexible.
My regular physician, I had that tele-meeting with her. It was with Zoom, and it was certainly not to the level that I'm used to with BetterHelp. It was just, I can only see one side of her face. She was bent over. She's looking over here. She's talking to somebody. Somebody took a call in the middle of one of my sessions. So it's a mess. This is not a mess. This is betterhelp.com/Sincast. Go there if you feel like you need some help, even if you feel like you kind of need some help. Go to betterhelp.com/Sincast, 10% off your first month, which is substantial, especially if you use it as much as I do. I really encourage you guys to be safe, to find help, to take care of yourself. And BetterHelp can help you do that. You want to do? Speaking of driving, you want to do some questions?
Let's do some questions.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth.
I'm listening.
Put
Some
your P in my V.
questions. What?
Put your P in my V.
There you go. You have to drive from Portland, Maine to San Diego. Using only the last 3 movies you watched, who is your navigator, driver, and backseat company?
Now,
That's very specific with Portland and San Diego. They could have just said East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah.
the one thing that I didn't quite understand about the question is it a character from the movie or is it the movie themselves?
Oh.
And so I did both, and I have my reasons.
Okay.
My navigator is going to be Aragorn from Lord of the Rings.
That's nice. That's
You
nice.
gotta have somebody. Gotta have somebody who knows where they're going and can track hobbits after a bunch of orcs attack. You gotta have that.
Yes.
My driver is going to be Ryan Gosling in Drive.
Good
dude.
call.
You need to have someone
Got
who
a
is
good crew, man.
That's right. You need to have somebody who's proficient with the wheels. And then for my company, I'm going to have Cameron Diaz in There's Something About Mary. Because her conversations with Ben Stiller are fun, and of course, she's nice to look at. So
that's a good car right there.
that is a good car. Now, if I was just going with the movies themselves, and when you go philosophically on this, I'm going to have The Godfather as my driver. It's an assured movie, and it is required to sit down for a long time. I have The Prestige as my navigator because the true protagonist doesn't take shortcuts.
Ooh.
And for a backseat company, I'll take Dazed and Confused because it has a ton of characters from different backgrounds who can entertain and never get boring.
Nice.
It's going to be a crowded back seat.
Yeah,
It
no
is.
fucking shit. It's like a Muppet
That's true.
car.
That's true. It'll be
gonna
just
stink
like
of weed.
We'll be traveling by map.
You're going to have, who's the guy that asks Matthew McConaughey to smell his finger?
Oh, it might be Nikki Cott character.
Oh, yeah. Jesus
And then the Wiley
Smell
Wiggins
my
character
finger.
is like Wiley Wiggins characters is like, it's fucking gross. You see it on his face.
So these are the last 3 movies I watched. Am I reading this correct?
Yes.
So I watched The Nice Guys yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm going to take Bumble, the hallucination giant smoking bumblebee, as my backseat company because he's sarcastic and snarky, and he knows a lot about flying cars. And then for my driver, I watched Bodied last night, 2 nights ago, with my wife. Which, Chris, did I see a comment that you'd watched this movie?
Yes.
And
I
you
saw
enjoyed
it.
this movie?
I did very much.
Okay, good. I'm taking Adam, the main character, as my driver because there's a part of this movie where the other rappers make Adam drive them around. One of them even says, "Now we got white people driving us around," and he does a good job as a driver.
Also known as Adam Driver.
Also known as the Adam Driver. And then my navigator is going to have to come from the movie Unstoppable, which is the train that won't slow down, as Homer would call it. And so I'm going to choose Denzel Washington because maybe he's not a navigator by trade in the movie, but he is a man of precision in that movie. I don't know how many times you've seen that movie, but there's a section where he's talking to a dispatcher who's trying to tell him to get into his side, which is this section of track next to the track where you can hide from a runaway train. And he's trying to convince the guy it's not big enough. And he starts breaking it down into feet. And he's like, it's 4,513 feet, but that's counting from light to light. In reality, it's only 2,700 such and such feet. And he's basically schooling this guy on this precise. So that's the kind of navigator you want, is somebody who doesn't cut corners.
So, it's funny, like, if now I did not pick that up on the question. I did not pick up, it's what it says. It's the last 3 movies. If I were to do this, my last 3 movies that I've seen are Art History, Ex Machina, and Metropolis.
Oh,
and
Whit Stillman?
the Fritz Lang Metropolis, 1927.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I watched those are the last three I've watched, and I would say my driver would have to be Metropolis. My navigator is probably God. See, art history. You don't want any of those to be.
Did you like that, by the way?
I guess so. Like, yeah, I liked it, but you don't want it to be any of those things in your car. You don't want it to be a driver, navigator, or it's going to have to be navigator by default. Yeah. And Ex Machina is going to be my backseat company.
All right. Can't argue with that.
So,
I've got kind of a jumble of movies that I've watched recently, but I also watched The Nice Guys. So I'm gonna have Ryan Gosling from Nice Guys be my driver.
Wow.
Figure he could get around pretty well. Even if he's hallucinating and, drinking and stuff like that. Weirdly enough, my navigator is going to be Michael Jordan from The Last Dance. Have you guys watched this the first part of the documentary?
10 parts. I can't take 10 parts of Michael Jordan anything, man. No.
It's actually really, really well done. This was one of my favorite teams of all time, the 97, 98 Bulls. I watched every game that they played. So I was super excited about this. So I watched that first episode. And you could have Michael Jordan as your navigator. Like he can run things on a court, so he could run things on the road, I think. Mm-hmm. And then my backseat company, unfortunately, is going to be Ted from Ted 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's cuddly, and he's usually got substances, and he's funny.
So Barrett, this movie, you didn't watch this with your kid.
No.
You didn't watch this for Sincast. You didn't watch it for sinning purposes. So why'd you watch this fucking movie?
Oh my God, it was just on.
No, it was
on,
movie.
And it was the easiest, breeziest comedy at that point that I needed. And I actually remembered it being better than it was because I've seen it before. It's not.
No, it's perfectly okay. I mean, I remember liking it pretty good. And Ted 2, which didn't do anything at all, which is crazy because that first one did it was a big hit.
Yeah.
Ted 2 comes out, nobody cares. And I thought Ted 2 was better than what people said it was. So,
yeah, I mean, it was perfectly passable. And that kind of humor appeals to me. So he'd be all right in the backseat.
Yeah. You'd have a lot of fun.
I'd have a lot of fun. We'd make up songs about storms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, next question. I had a question for Jeremy. I had heard on the podcast that he hadn't seen It Chapter 2. I just watched it on HBO and then watched the Sins video for it. My question is, what is it like experiencing a movie for the first time narrating the Sins video?
You guys don't want to answer this? I'm just kidding.
Obviously, you get spoiled a lot with movies that you haven't seen, right?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, I do in the moment, but I forget much of what I narrate to the point where I couldn't tell you on a specific video if I wrote a sin or if Chris did or what have you. So it doesn't really spoil me watching the movies. It's not very weird experience as long as I know the characters. So like for It Chapter 2, I've seen the first one a bunch, so I know who all the characters are. So the names come out of my mouth easily, and I'm able to focus more on what the action is that's being described. But when we have a movie, what did I write down? When we have a movie like Ocean's 8 or Love Actually, or I've never seen it, and there's a bunch of people in it, and I don't know any of the character names, I will often halfway through narrating go, what the fuck is even happening in this movie? And so it gets to be more of a slog to get through because my brain doesn't process this stuff as well. Whereas like a Fast and Furious movie, I know all those character names. They can come out of my mouth pretty easily. And yeah, in the moment I might get spoiled here or there, but I'll forget within a day or two and be able to watch that movie again.
I will say that for Barrett and I, there are moments where we have to review a script that we don't know the movie. And it's the same thing because we're trying to figure out if this is apt or not or whatever. And There are plenty of movies that you have either not seen or you haven't seen in forever, and you read a script and you're like, God damn it, I'm so fucking lost. I have no idea what's going on at all. And sometimes, like, even if it's a movie I haven't seen, and I'm pretty much like, I don't like being spoiled. But I have to go to the movie itself and look at the scene that's being talked about, because I can't visualize it.
No,
and,
that actually happened in the script phase when you and Jonathan did The Curse of La Llorona.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, what is
that
going
movie doesn't
on?
that movie doesn't make sense when you're watching it. So I can't even imagine what it's like when you haven't seen it.
So generally, it doesn't affect your enjoyment of a movie later on, though, Jeremy.
No, I don't think so. Again, at the end of the day, I say so many of these things. They're all just words to me after a while. Like I just narrated something earlier today. I haven't seen the movie. I didn't write sins for it. I'm sure I got spoiled 2 hours ago when I was narrating that, but I couldn't tell you what happens in that movie. Now, this so happens to be a movie I'm never going to watch anyway, but
I assume that happens a lot.
I forget a lot pretty quickly. So,
all right, that was fun. Had a possible question for a podcast. Is there a movie that if someone says they legitimately enjoyed, you can't trust their opinion on movies anymore? This person's is Suicide Squad. What do you guys think?
So I've never gotten to the point, really, at least not to the point of like saying to myself, I just can't trust that person anymore, especially if it's somebody that I do trust in general. But I will say that there was a time back in the 90s, there was this girl I was like completely in love with, and she was like talking about how much she loved Armageddon, and it took her down a notch. It really did. And it shouldn't, but it did. And then she said that she didn't like Fargo. This is the opposite end of the question. Didn't like Fargo and thought it was like a TV movie. And so I was like, holy shit, maybe I shouldn't be in love with this girl. So it does affect your opinion. I think it does. When somebody says something and just like, that just completely on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I'm willing to listen to anybody. I don't just don't put those people out of my head and say those people just don't know what they're talking about ever when it comes to movies. So I don't get to that point.
Yeah, I wrote down that I was flirting with this girl at a bar once in my post-college years, and she revealed that her favorite movie of all time was Captain Ron. Mm-hmm. And I almost immediately stopped flirting with her.
You were probably flirting with this. You're probably flirting with this woman that Barrett and I used to play poker with. She always brought up Captain Ron.
I'll be honest. At the time, I had not even seen Captain Ron, but I knew Captain Ron enough to know that if this was her favorite movie, she and I were not going to agree on very many movies.
Yep.
And, I need to agree on movies before I can put the P in the V. That's not really true, but kind of.
Mm-hmm. I don't really think it affects me, probably because I have such eclectic tastes. You guys know that I like stuff like G.I. Joe, Rise of the Cobra. But I understand when a very smart person like Aaron Dicer loves the Fast and Furious movies. And I don't think it colors my opinion if he says, you know what, I think this movie would be good for you. I don't think there's anything where... Like, I don't have a Captain Ron story. I don't have like that kind of thing where it colors my opinion so much that I don't trust anything, even if it's Suicide Squad. I mean, there's people that like Suicide Squad for whatever reason, but that's just me.
Yeah. I remember a dude at Hollywood 27 saying how much he loved Michael Bay movies, and he was like, those are the movies that I want to make when I'm older. And I was like, holy fucking shit. But then he turned right around and said that he liked John McTiernan a lot. So I was like, John McTiernan's good.
Yeah.
Michael
He's
Bay,
got-
though, I don't know. Hey, if you like McTiernan, I don't know why you like Bay. I know that they both are action directors, but Jesus, both of them are completely different.
So Jeremy was talking about
drugs.
watching a. So Jeremy was talking about watching a movie on drugs. My question is, what movie or TV show is better on drugs, and what movie was awful because of drugs? For the pod.
I don't have an answer for the second one. Drugs
I've got
make
one
everything
for the
better.
second one right off. Actually,
Let's hear it.
I don't really smoke marijuana all that much, but like before I went to see Return of the King in the theater, I smoked a little bit with my buddy, and the key issue here is it was just a little. So I got like a little bit high, and it was enjoyable. You know, I was floating along with the movie and everything, and then I wasn't high anymore. And then the movie had like another 6 hours left.
Yep.
and that was
after 5 hours had already gone by.
It was interminable, and plus the pleasant feeling that I had before was no longer there. So it made it, even though I understand the merits of that movie and I do like it, it made it a very uncomfortable experience.
I can say that I don't smoke weed very often at all. In fact, I can probably count on my hands how many times I've smoked weed or had edibles or whatever. But in Vegas, I did have some edibles, and I watched Toy Story 4 on edibles. and I can tell you that I that movie was just, I didn't understand anything that was going on in it. Just didn't understand it at all. And later watched it, and I was like, well, I remember a lot of this happening, but I just couldn't grasp it. The only experiences I've had is when I've been drunk watching movies, and I don't even drink that often either, but the most notable one, I probably even brought this up on the podcast before. The first time I ever got super toe up was with my brother in Arkansas, and we watched Saving Silverman. And I had like 4 rum and cokes and 4 tequila shots.
Jeez.
watching that movie, and we watched it. And we were both just laughing our asses off. We thought it was the funniest movie ever made. There's that whole part where he fantasizes about being in the ring, and he gets punched really hard, and the referee's like, dead. And we were just we kept rewinding it and watching the scene and everything. That movie was hilarious. And then I watched it the very next day, and I was like, wow, this movie's not funny at all. Although some people try to tell me that it really is funny, but it just was, compared to what we had gone through the night before, God, that was not funny. Not at all.
All right, my pick. Don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah.
My pick is The Secret of Nim.
Yeah, dude. See, this is something I must do now that you brought this up.
This movie will fuck you up even if you're sober. And this is a rated G kids movie, but because it's 1982, like if it came out today, I guarantee you it'd be like PG-13, maybe even R for horror imagery. This is some fucked up shit.
That fucking owl, man.
I'm telling you, and then the rats, and they've been experimented on, and it's just some scary shit. This is also Don Bluth.
Yeah, it's a Don Bluth.
But if you are of the sort of mind to toke on the ganja or eat the edibles, do that, and then watch The Secret of Nim. Best experience you will have in your entire life. Better than sex. You'll be like every 3 seconds, you'll be like, "Oh, my God!" The other ones I was going to mention that have similar effects would be Fantasia, Princess Mononoke, or literally any nature documentary. I like back when I used to get high a lot. I would get high at like 2 a.m, and I would turn on whatever the fuck was on Animal Planet, be like, raccoons of North America. And it would be riveting for 2 hours. Nature documentaries are the bomb. There you go. There's my. Don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah.
Man, Secret of Nim. Like that was another one of those movies that were heavy rotation when I was a kid. Used to come on HBO all the time. I've seen Secret of Nim a million times. Although if you put it in front of me now, I would probably have forgotten about so much that I watched, especially since it was only a kid's mind that was watching it at the time. So there's probably stuff that I would register now as an adult that would be completely different.
What I should tell you that you'll appreciate is that the only reason I know this is that our friend Russell at the theater said, "Oh, you want a good movie to watch while you get high? Come on over to my house." And I went over to his house and we smoked up and watched The Secret of Nim and blew our minds together. It was a very formative night for me.
Nice.
Hey, Chris, hope you're doing well and are safe in the lockdown. Wanted to ask a question here. Rather than Facebook. Because I've stopped using
and
Facebook.
I'm guessing
altogether.
I got this from Discord. I'm guessing I got it from Discord, but I'm not sure.
All right. Whose performance do you think deserved an Oscar, even if the movie was average or subpar? Easiest example of this is Us for this person for Lupita Nyong'o. Now, I don't think Us was average or subpar, but that's the example for the question.
Well, in the spirit of the question is, should have gotten an Oscar, stood out above the rest of the movie in performance. I think that's a decent answer. But yeah, that movie's good.
Yeah, I kept coming up with answers for actors who were in good movies that should have gotten nominated, but I finally got down to Eddie Murphy and the Nutty Professor. That movie, I remember when it came out, I thought it was pretty funny, but I mean, now time has passed and it's probably not that funny, but I felt like Eddie Murphy was doing something in that movie that should have been honored in some way. He's playing Sherman Klump, big rotund Sherman Klump, sweet guy, everything. And then he plays Buddy Love, which is completely opposite in there. And then he plays the whole Klump family, which of course is the basis for that Fatties thing that came out in Tropic Thunder. But he's doing something there that I think is worthy of attention. I think he even does it in Coming to America, although he doesn't have as many big roles. He just has the one big role and then a bunch of tiny roles in Coming to America. In this one, he's doing two, and I think he does them both very well, completely different in both roles. And then he has to play the mom, the grandmother or whatever, the mom, the father, and the uncle. He plays all of those characters differently too. And so if you're looking for a movie that is subpar, but the performance should have been Oscar nominated, Eddie Murphy, I think, is a pretty good one, especially in that year.
That's a good answer.
I think I came up with one other one. Just from the past year, Edward Norton in Motherless Brooklyn was one that could have been nominated, but that's on a lower scale.
Interesting. What do you think?
I got two answers. Jaimon Hounsou and basically anything he's ever been in.
Yeah.
But specifically that bullshit Tarzan movie.
Oh God.
With the Nazi guy from the Bastards.
Alexander Skarsgård?
And
Christoph Waltz.
Christoph Waltz. I even wrote a sin in that movie at one point, about 2/3 of the way through. Like, Jaimon is acting his ass off here. Somebody tell him he's in a shitty movie. But then the other one I wrote down was James McAvoy in Split or Glass.
Yes, for sure.
Split has a better
really
reputation than I think it deserves. I think Glass has a pretty average reputation, but McAvoy is Oscar worthy in both of those movies.
Yeah.
Especially in Glass, there's that scene in the cell where he changes between personalities rapid fire. And
you're doing some buttery shit.
He's just so fucking good in those movies. He's way above anything else happening there.
So I've reimagined this a little bit and changed it into a performance for a movie that was considered lesser than Academy standards. So similar to Us, I think Us is an excellent movie. But I think a lot of horror and comedy, in particular performances, like you were saying with Eddie Murphy, are completely ignored. You could say Eddie Murphy for Dolomite Is My Name would be a good one for last year.
For sure.
But for me, like the horror genre, like in particular Midsommar from last year, I think Florence Pugh's performance in that is one of the best performances of that year. She goes to a different place than you see typically in mainstream cinema. And I think horror is a good vessel to get to those emotions. And I think because it's ignored as a genre almost by the Academy, those performances don't get nominated. So that's one. I would even say somebody like Dustin Hoffman or Adam Sandler in Myriad Stories from a couple years ago, a comedy that wouldn't be considered, awards worthy. I even wrote down Jim Carrey in The Cable Guy. He's going for something. That's a singular performance. It should be recognized.
Yeah, you're bringing up Midsummer. Toni Collette for Hereditary.
Yeah, that was one too.
Would have been a good one. And just to sort of illustrate your point there, although Kaluuya did get nominated for Get Out, but I think Get Out had gotten ridden a wave basically.
Yeah. Which box office disappointment did you think had the most creative influence? For example, A24 has movies that make an impact despite limited releases and box office. Also, The Thief and The Cobbler inspired both Disney and DreamWorks, even though it underperformed. What do you guys think about this? Creative influences from box office disappointments.
So the reason why I ended up watching Metropolis was because I answered the question, Metropolis, sometime last night answering this question. Metropolis is a movie that when it came out, nobody really went to go. I mean, if I'm looking at some of the reporting, it was the equivalent of making like $35 million in 2009 is what it did. So it wasn't like a bomb or anything. It may have been a bomb, like as far as like how much it took to make it and everything, the budget. So Metropolis is in so many of our like science fiction movies these days. You have this is from Mental Floss. I looked this up on Mental Floss. It said the design of C-3PO is from that. The machine / man in Metropolis looks like what C-3PO later does. The Matrix. Videos for Madonna's Express Yourself, Whitney Houston's Queen of the Night, and several Lady Gaga songs. Brazil, the futuristic cities of Blade Runner, Dark City, the Hudsucker Proxy, and Tim Burton's Batman films, and the wild-haired mad scientists of countless movies. The other thing that I noticed about Metropolis watching it last night was The Fifth Element is in there. What else was another movie that came up? But I noticed a lot of that Hudsucker Proxy thing is pretty awesome. Like when you see the office of the main rich guy in Metropolis, they had to have patterned it a little bit after that.
The actual office, like that big cavernous office thing.
And all the little ticker stuff, not with paper, but like actual screens, but like just the way it's all set up is very you can think of Hudsucker Proxy, and for a while there I was like, really, Batman? I don't really see anything in Batman. And then towards the end there's a scene in a bell tower and everything, and so there's a lot of little things in that. But Metropolis didn't make that much money, but then it got a huge following over the years, and it's been super influential. So I'm going to go with that.
That's a good choice. Good choice. I got a good choice. I'm going with Office Space.
Nice.
Which, from what Wikipedia tells me, they made for $10 million, and it only made $12 million in box office.
By the way, there's a great oral history of that movie. If you might want to Google it, talking about what Mike Judge had to do to make it, and like all the different choices that they made, and then of course ultimately leading to the fact that it was a big huge bomb. But then later on, everybody knows that movie.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of comedy films that have come since then that owe a lot to Office Space. I think even maybe The Office British and or American. You could argue at least maybe got greenlit because of Office Space, or at least because Office Space started being a cult hit I remember almost as soon as it hit home video. People started talking about liking it and sharing it and whatnot.
The oral history says something about it being on Comedy Central was the big break for it, and they would play it constantly. Yeah, and people just ended up just knowing that movie.
Yeah, so I just think it's definitely a cultural touchstone now, a cult favorite, but it was a bomb when it came out, and I think it's probably been pretty influential. So there you go.
Well, yeah, and we constantly quote it on a lot of things. Anything that's pointless. We talk about TPS reports. Bosses are often given that Gary Cole treatment when you talk about them. I don't know if the Office Space itself from the late 90s is something that's going to hold up over the years. That's one thing that I guess that office buildings are starting to get away from, maybe, is that the way that's all set up, where
like the cubicles and everything.
The cubicles, yeah, because a lot of offices that you go to now try to follow that. That Google method.
Yeah, everything's wide open.
Yeah, everything's open space and everything. But I mean, I'm sure it's still. I mean, cubicles are probably going to always be a part of a lot of people's lives. So that's a good one.
I've got an example from the same year that I did not realize forgot that was a flop. It's Fight Club. Fight Club was a flop domestically for sure. I mean, worldwide it took in $100 million, but I still don't think that it necessarily made money. But that's hugely influential from, Fincher kind of righting the ship, like, really taking his career up a notch, from Tyler Durden, from Brad Pitt, taking a turn from his like pretty boy ways. Edward Norton really getting in there. Like, I think just the aesthetic of it, the reveal, the look of it, I think it's been hugely influential for Fincher in future Fincher movies, but also for a lot of people, and that's a movie everybody quotes all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Fight Club. That's an interesting part of that book that we read, that best movie year ever book, talking about how like Fincher was pissed off at Fox because of Alien 3, and they didn't think they were going to get Fincher, but then management had changed, so that he was willing to go back and do it, and they were willing to let him do whatever he wanted on that movie, which is crazy. Is it possible, though, that Fight Club was more influential to stupid-ass people than it was for smart people?
I think it's to both. I mean, you saw like a reference to Fight Club in Game Night, right? Like, so yes and yes.
Every time somebody makes a piece of art that is anti the thing that they're talking about, but they sort of glorify it at the same time, but people who don't have the capacity to realize that, that it's not a thing you're supposed to emulate. They go out and say, oh, you know what? They're just like Oscar Isaac and Ex Machina, right? They're like, they look at that thing like, oh, that idea about a fight club? That was a great idea you had. Let's have a fight club. Let's start fight clubs.
What movie characters did you fall in love with or gain a much greater enjoyment of or appreciation for years later that you just sort of glossed over or simply accepted their part in the movie on your initial viewing? This example, which I won't read all the way, one of his favorite films is Raiders of the Lost Ark. But as I've gotten older, I realized how awesome the Marion Ravenwood character is. She's powerful, witty, confident, while simultaneously being tender and emotional. And Karen Allen was absolutely gorgeous then. So those are details that 5-year-old me could never grasp. So what are these characters that you've fallen in love with on rewatches that you just kind of like dismissed on the initial watch?
This will be my second Dazed and Confused a reference of the day. Jason London's character in Dazed and Confused is somebody that I wrote off as sort of the He's just the main character with not really much going on other than the fact that he doesn't want to sign this paper saying he won't do drugs over the summer. And he's just kind of a dick, but you know, he's the main character. He sort of guides us through the movie and whatever. But over subsequent viewings, I've realized that character has a lot more going on for him. He plays Randall Pink Floyd. He's going to be the senior quarterback. And yes, the beginning of this movie has the coaches give him a piece of paper where he's supposed to pledge that he will not engage in any drugs or alcohol over the summer because they want to have a winning season when they come back to school. But there's so many things about him. He takes that Mitch kid under his wing. He's the one that's just getting his ass popped with, when they're doing the paddling and everything. And he's the one who comes by and takes him under his wing. Now, you could read into the fact that he's kind of in love with Mitch's sister is the reason why he does this. But the reason why I think it's more than just that is that there's a point in the movie where Mitch is in the car with him and he's talking about the Ben Affleck O'Banion character. And he says, that guy's a dick. And he's like, wait, right? He's making sure that it's cool that he calls O'Banion a dick. And he goes, yeah, Jason London's like, yeah, he's kind of a joke, whatever. But then he goes, but he's not a bad guy to have out on the field blocking for you. And even this asshole character, this Ben Affleck character, he's got something good to say about that guy. And he's the only character in the movie that accepts everybody. The stoners, the popular kids, everybody. He likes everybody. He wants everybody to have a good time. It's easy to watch that movie and be, oh, Matthew McConaughey, oh, he's so funny. All right, all that. But Jason London's really got the most complex character of the movie, probably. And it's hard to see that when you first watch it because it just seems like, he's just kind of a bland lead character. And in a way he is, but look at his actions and look at the things that he does. He's just a kid who wants to have fun, man. He's 17. He's about to be a senior and he knows that this football team is not going to be good without him. So he can tell the coaches to shove it because it's on them if they don't want him on the team. And they're going to win with or without him, and they're going to take him as him, not as somebody else. So that's why I love that character.
Wow.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
What do you got? I'm going all the way back to 1987, kids.
Yeah.
And a little movie I've seen 1,000 times called The Untouchables.
Right.
It's very easy when you're a young teenager to gravitate towards Elliot Ness's moral righteousness or Sean Connery's snarky veteran or even Andy Garcia's hotshot sharpshooter rookie police officer who just joined the squad. But the accountant is somebody I often took for granted the first many times I watched this movie. The character's name is Oscar Wallace. And I always just considered him there for comedic effect because he's such a bookie that when they do cop stuff, he looks out of place like a fish out of water. But if you really think about it, he came into this whole outfit, he was assigned here. He didn't really ask for this. And he is a tax code guy. He's a finance guy. And, before halfway through the movie, he's got a shotgun. He's one of the 4 guys riding horses in to raid that liquor buy on the bridge in Canada. He fucking kills people. His gun jams and he runs up and headbutts that guy in the face. And this guy is such a straight arrow, but then he stops and takes a drink of that liquor that's pouring out of that barrel after it's been shot. And then, of course, he is the first one to ultimately suffer any real consequences here as he's killed by what's his name, Nitty in the elevator. And the first many times I watched this movie, I took his presence for granted. I didn't think he was as important a member of the Untouchable crew, but ultimately he may be one of the most important ones, and he certainly stands in for us even more than Elliot Ness does. Elliot Ness has to learn how to dirty it up, but we kind of come in totally green, and we're one of the first casualties of the movie's harsh reality. Anyway, not to get too deep, but that guy means a lot more to me now when I watch that movie than he ever did before.
That's a great one. Try not getting chills during his scene during that Canada-U.S. bridge thing.
Yeah.
When he's taking charge and everything. It's one of the big chill moments. Of course, the music helps too. But that moment where he's taking charge in that scene is one of my favorites of that movie, of a movie that's got a lot of favorite scenes in it. So yeah, that's a great one.
My answer is a little bit different from because I'm derailing into TV, but I thought this was on my mind recently. Rhea Seehorn's character in Better Call Saul, Kim Wexler, was initially set up in that series to almost be the wet blanket, right? To be the one that spoils the fun, that tries to prevent Saul from being Saul, and we want to see him be Saul eventually. And from the very first, I was just like, she almost operated as like a Skylar White. You know how Skylar White got all that disdain, so much so that poor Anna Gunn herself got a lot of bad mail and stuff like that. But that character kind of was a wet blanket for Walter White, and it probably obviously needed to be there. But I didn't want to see that in Better Call Saul, and this character is developing so much that I appreciate her just as much, if not more, than I do the Bob Odenkirk character, because they work so well together. She's not just constantly saying, you can't do this, you can't do this. She's working ways around to make their relationship work. And I think that's very cool. And I think it's very cool to see it in a female character on, a highly rated show too, not become that Skylar White-ish wet blanket type of thing.
Well, and the way they have written her character, it does seem like Bob Odenkirk's character is going to be in trouble with her. Like the whole relationship is on the line every time he does something stupid. And they did something this past season where it almost sounds like she wants to be a part of it more than she doesn't want it to happen at all. Yeah. And we don't know exactly where everything's going there, but they have really, like, I feel like she is turning in Emmy worthy performance.
I'm telling you.
And she hasn't gotten one. And she's been perfectly good enough to get one in the last season at least. Mm-hmm. I think she's finally getting some due for that role, and by the end of this season, this past season that just happened, you realize that she's got a lot more going on than she's probably tired of being the goody two shoes.
Yeah, she's always she was initially set up as the tight ass, like ponytailed, by the book, that type of thing. And it's just so cool to see. And going back and watching older episodes, you can see that there's a lot more character nuance that she was putting in even at that point. So I think it's very cool to see.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're watching this season, by the way, Chris, because this is some of the best television I've seen in forever, I think, is this season of Better Call Saul. And it's completely different from last season, Jeremy. So
yeah,
whenever you do get around to binging it, I think you'll enjoy it.
Like at the beginning of this season, I think 5 or 6 episodes got rattled off on my DVR. Like we're just sitting there because I wasn't just like horny to watch the show.
Yeah.
And I watched the first episode, and then I was done with those 6 episodes by the time the 7th episode came out. So then every week I was just, all right, I got to watch that new one. That new one. So a hallmark of a great show for sure. That is going to do it for this episode.
Woo, covered a lot of ground, baby.
We did. We went to our final 4. What do you think of our final 4? Some of you I know are going to be upset about some of these because I've heard some of you say some of you such and such is your favorite movie, and it's gone now. So, welcome to our world. There's plenty of movies that I wish weren't cut out of this, but there can only be one winner. There can be only one. Go to Sincast presented by Cinemasins on Facebook. We're also on Cinemasins Twitter, Music Video Sins Twitter. We're on SoundCloud. We also have a Discord. If you want to get on Discord, you can go to the Reddit page on the right side and go to a link there, or you can go to Facebook and private message me, and I can give you a link. That'll do it for this week. It's Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, and Barrett Sher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
That sounds like the beginning of an ultimately terrible horror movie.
It does. It does.
It's called
curiosity
Password.
curiosity got the best of me, and I finally clicked on the email, and then I opened up the attachment.
The hotmail's coming from inside the house.
Yes.
And then suddenly your face contorted into a ring like.
Yeah. Yes.
Hey, so I just for the first time I watched Strangers on a Train last night.
That's a beautiful movie.
You guys have seen this movie, right?
I've seen it many times.
That movie ends in such a fucking bonkers way, man. Like that's just one of the weirdest endings I think I've ever seen, with the merry-go-round stuff and him like contorting to get to the cigarette lighter. And there's so much emphasis on that cigarette lighter, like it's the only thing. And then they spent this whole time hiding the fact that he was involved at all. And then he just tells them at the end. He just tells them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was amazed and dumbfounded by this movie because I know it's so good, but it's so bonkers.
Yeah. Hitchcock had a tough time ending films a lot of times. I mean, no, seriously, like think of some of the best movies he's done. Psycho has that terrible, like, he was a transvestite, that bullshit.
Yeah.
It has all that like psychobabble at the end, not to no pun intended, but movies. There's a lot of his movies that do that. The Birds has a pretty cool ending, but it feels like he was kind of struggling to figure out how to end that one too.
Yeah, that was just I was not prepared for that merry-go-round, man. Because you think Strangers on a Train. I thought they were going to be on the train for longer. I thought it was going to be the whole thing was on the train.
Seen Throw Mama from the train, right?
Just
Throw Mama from the train is. That wasn't going to be 2 hours of throwing a mama off a train.
But what if it was? That would have made it so much better.
It would. But yeah, they patterned themselves after Strangers on a Train. Throw Mama from a Train did. I like the beginning of it because Billy Crystal has writer's block because his wife stole his book, and he's trying to write. The night was. And he keeps trying to come up with an adjective for it, and he's like, the night was moist. The night was stuff like that.
Did you see the Harry Styles cover of Sledgehammer on Howard Stern?
I did not.
Yeah,
it was
I
awesome.
thought that was really good.
It was awesome.
I actually don't like that song, the original song, but I really like.
There's
what
Robert Palmer always had that sort of a like kind of tood to his voice. Not
Peter
Robert,
Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
There's kind of like hoity-toityness. No offense. Even in your eyes.
I love Sledgehammer.
Well, you should listen to the Harry Styles version because I'm sure you'll like it. I was never a super big Peter Gabriel fan. But
I wasn't either.
Yeah, I thought that cover was delightful. I guess it's on his album. I think it's not just a performance he did. Like, I think he covered it on the album.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, it's got a real funky feel to it. I like the look of his band too. I like him, man.
Yeah,
I like what he's
except that
doing. Like
Watermelon Sugar song. What the fuck is that?
I remember, this is way off the subject, but I remember in college we did this show that was supposed to be on the public access at MTSU.
Huh.
And it was a sketch show. It was me and these two other guys. We went around shooting some things. And we did, there was a story in the school paper, the MTSU paper, about some dude who was caught masturbating in one of the parking lots. It's a student. They've showed his picture and everything.
Oh
no!
I was just like, holy shit! And so we wrote a sketch about. The newspaper was called Sidelines, and we wrote a sketch where we were disgusted that guy's picture in the paper and everything, and the guy that we had doing the acting and everything, we wanted to make it look like he was angry and he was yelling and blah 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 and whatever you do in the parking lot with shaving cream is your own business, and apparently shaving cream was involved.
Nice.
And so at the very end, after this angry diatribe, he's supposed to get up, and he's supposedly naked the whole time that he's been saying this. But of course, when we shot it, he had like a Speedo or some shit on, where like we would blur that out and he would look like he was naked, but you know, that was fun. College.
Nice.